Story 1. In 6th grade, I started taking books from the school library without checking them out. I always returned them, but I wanted to reread them and did not want to deal with return dates. It became an obsession, and I began to enjoy the thrill of not getting caught. I would return the books, but I kept a stack in my room behind my dresser because it was shorter and placed diagonally in the corner, leaving space behind it. One day, I came home from school to find all the books on the kitchen table because my mother had found them, and my parents turned me in. We met with the principal. They said they would not press charges. They could have, since the books were worth $1,000 of school property, but because I admitted what I had done and there was no damage, they did not. Instead, I received 1 week of in-school suspension and was required to work in the library after school for the rest of the year, restocking books and cleaning desks and computers. I ended up enjoying it so much that I volunteered to continue in 7th and 8th grade before leaving for high school. Story 2. In middle school, I made a comic book in which the principal was literally dropping nuclear bombs on students who misbehaved. I made many copies and sold them for 50 cents. I was called to the principal's office. He said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to nuke you. But if you make one more comic like this, you will be suspended." Story 3. I hit a girl with a dodgeball during a game. I wish I were kidding. Story 4. My school had a strict hands-off policy, meaning you could not touch anyone else for any reason. I got in trouble in kindergarten for holding hands with my twin brother. Story 5. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes very young and was brittle for a few years. At recess, when I was 10 or 11, I urgently needed to use the bathroom, but the recess supervisor would not let me go inside. I was a little kid hopping up and down on the playground trying not to wet my pants. I looked over and saw the cornfield next to the playground, walked over quickly, and relieved myself at the edge of the field. The supervisor grabbed me and escorted me to the principal's office, which was inside where I had not been allowed to go, and told him what I had done. He berated the supervisor in front of me, saying she knew I was diabetic and had a medical issue and should have let me use the bathroom. He told her to leave his office and told me that if I needed to go like that again, I should just come inside without asking. Later, the supervisor went up to my mother in the car pickup line and told her that I had walked over and gone to the bathroom in the cornfield in front of the whole class instead of asking to go inside. My mother believed her, and I was paddled at home for what I had done. I screamed for my mother to call the school and speak with the principal, but she trusted the adult instead of her child. It was another example of my mother's narcissistic parenting. My brother and I were left to bear it because it made her look better. Story 6. In 9th grade football, the coach called us a bunch of pussies. I told him to eat it. I told my father about it. He also thought it was funny. Story 7. I wrote my name on the lunch table in middle school. It was very stupid, especially because I did not notice the teacher walk by while I was writing. Story 8. Laughing out loud, my buddy and I were in 7th grade in 2011. I punched him in the balls at recess. I was an asshole, I know, and I got sent to the office and had after-school detention. The funniest part was he had done nothing. He was just punched and was given detention as well. We are still best friends 14 years later and joke about it to this day. We're both like, "Why the hell did you get sent to detention? You were just a victim of me being an absolute idiot." Story 9. Had a gel pen tattoo parlor and took payment in cash and Pokemon cards. My little racket got shut down pretty quick. The Texas public education system hates small businesses. Sarcasm. Story 10. I was banned from sitting next to a friend at lunch because we poured a plastic cup of Jell-O onto his hand. He threw it across the lunchroom. It hit a table and splattered over 4 people. Story 11. I told my social geography teacher that she was a moron for teaching that the Philippine government was to blame for the Rana Plaza collapse. I refused to apologize and was sent to detention. The teacher supervising detention sent me to lunch because he agreed with me. Story 12. I snapped my ruler while showing a friend how bendy it was. I got detention for that at age 8. Story 13. I skipped school. That was the official reason I was suspended. It was 1982, and I was in 6th grade. My 2 best friends decided to go on a shooting spree at our school. They came to my house to steal my stepdad's .357 Magnum, assuming I would be okay with it. I played along while secretly calling the police. After a lot of back and forth with the police, who initially did not believe me, they finally did. My friends and I were detained and later arrested. So I was suspended from school because I stayed home and stopped two friends from killing people. That was our defense before the school board when we asked to rescind the suspension. The board shortened the suspension but said they would only remove it if I stayed out of trouble for the next few years. Story 14. Sorry, I can't help edit text that includes sexual content involving minors. I can, however, provide a cleaned, non-sexual version suitable for text-to-speech. When I was in 4th grade, I found a magazine at a house that was being built in my neighborhood. I cut out some pictures and took them to school. During lunch, I was selling the pictures in the boys' bathroom and was caught. The principal sent the pictures home with a note. My parents thought it was hilarious. In 6th grade, I was performing a chant from an album on the playground during lunch and was caught. That incident led to my being placed in the most advanced class, and the next year I attended an excellent private school where my mother was a teacher. Story 15. I assaulted someone at lunch. It was common to dump salt packets in people's hair during middle school. I don't know why. It was just funny. I got caught and had lunch detention for 3 days. I ate with the band kids in their band room, and one day they had a party where I got some cake. 10 out of 10. I would do it again. Story 16. I was an all-around good kid, but once I saw a classmate get a 5 on a test. I told the other kids about it. I got back to her and she told the teacher. The teacher sent a note home. My parents said, I guess the kid should not have gotten a 5 on the test. Story 17. I tried and failed to hit a student outside of school in retaliation after he threw a rock that struck below my left eyebrow, less than 2 centimeters from my eye. The bus driver arrived, corralled us in the front seat, and sent us to the principal's office. The principal gave us both a week of detention, even though the incident happened off school grounds and I was defending myself. I served the detention and was released a day early because the other student never showed up. Story 18. I thought it was unfair that boys could go to the gym while girls had to do yoga. I wanted to do yoga, but I thought dividing activities by gender was unfair. I argued for a good 20 minutes with the teacher until she let the students decide. All the boys went to the gym, only one girl joined them. The others chose yoga. The teacher sent an angry email to my mother, and she replied that I take gender equality seriously. Story 19. I set off a stink bomb I bought at a party supply store in the boys' locker room, which caused the entire school building to be briefly evacuated. I caught a mouse and threw it into an active classroom. I made a miniature crossbow out of a ballpoint pen and a rubber band that fired ink cartridges and lodged cartridges into ceiling tiles, walls, and fellow students. Story 20. I think it was 2nd or 3rd grade. I told a joke that my grandpa shared with me the weekend before. How to Catch an Elephant by Grandpa Ben. I actually stood in front of the class to tell this gripping tale. First, you need to go to the jungle where there are elephants. When you get there, you cut down a large clearing. Then you dig a hole where those trees were. You fill the hole with the trees and burn them to ash. Then you line the outside of the hole with peas and wait quietly. When the elephant comes to take a pea, you kick it into the ash hole. The class loved it. The old curmudgeon teacher did not, so I had to go to see Mr. Clinker. Story 21. Some friends and I, when we were freshmen, took small tubes of lubricant and put them on the stair railings, then watched people put their hands in them in panic. It was immature middle school behavior. Anyway, we got caught, but my friends took the blame and never turned me in. The administration dubbed us the Lotion Boys for the rest of the year. I was also late half the time and had to beg the attendance clerk to let me stay at school. I had moved halfway through middle school and had to attend an out-of-district school. Story 22. I was kicked out of French class for laughing at Christmas songs. They struck me as exceptionally funny. I was also sent to the principal's office once for sneezing because the teacher thought I was covering up swearing. I sneezed in the office. Once the principal understood, she sent me back to class. When I walked back in, I told the teacher, that was bullshit. She glared at me, so I said she owed me a freebie, and she let me continue my work. Story 23. I found some old letters and paperwork from about 15 to 17 years ago from my elementary school. Apparently, I got in trouble in kindergarten, which in Europe is for 4 to 5-year-olds. I was described as hyperactive after being given 4,000 milligrams of sugar and 500 milligrams of caffeine. I pushed a chair across the room. I am not joking. I used a crayon instead of a pencil and drew on myself with a washable marker. These are from 2 letters. The school system wanted to put me on medication for these heinous infractions instead of doing the job they were already legally obligated to do. Story 24. I made a peace sign behind my back during the class photo. Right after the photographer took the picture, he singled me out and said he had to retake it. The teacher was furious and I had to sit out recess. No one explained why my crime was so serious. A couple of teachers even walked past and told me how bad it was. 25 years later, I still wonder what the big deal was. I was a 7-year-old making a peace sign. I sometimes wonder if, because I made it behind my back, they thought I was showing my middle finger. Either way, a quick discussion would have avoided a lot of confusion for 7-year-old me. Any punishment in school should come with an explanation. Otherwise, nothing is achieved. Story 25. Wearing Dickies instead of approved uniform pants, having untucked shirts, smoking a cigarette in a neighborhood adjacent to the school, and telling a nun to shave her mustache. Story 26. Instinctive observation and cooing depend on a coordinated pause. Unwritten consistency towers. Story 27. I went on a school trip to France in the 1990s. I was 9 and visited a shopping center I had been to before with my family. My dad showed me a shop that sold bangers and bottle rockets, some that looked like carrot-sized sticks of dynamite. I showed my classmates and nearly every boy spent all his money there. When a teacher found out, she lost her temper and confiscated everything. 2 huge carrier bags full of explosives. She took them back to England on the ferry and told us that if we wanted them back, our parents would have to come and collect them. I got in a lot of trouble with the teachers. My dad, being a child at heart, happily went into the school, took full responsibility, and took the school's explosives home. We then spent months blowing things up in our garden. We even rigged a model plane and made it explode while suspended from a line below the balcony. Story 28. I got mad at the county information technology technician, so I started volunteering to fix issues at my school under the guidance of a teacher. I then began going to other schools to repair problems, and eventually someone at one school thanked the Board of Education for the help. When the information technology technician found out, he went on strike, and that is when I got in trouble. Apparently, he had job protection and could not be fired. Before I started fixing things, he had been showing up at work. After he found out, he stayed home in his underwear, still receiving pay and eating Cheetos. I almost did not graduate because the information technology technician's cousin was the art teacher at my high school, and that teacher accused me of plagiarizing some of my artwork. I got some revenge, though. He called me a week after graduation asking for help setting up a photo-negative scanner, and I got him to admit the plagiarism accusation was baseless. The principal nearly punched him over it. Story 29. I have red hair and glasses, and I was short in middle school. I was bullied a lot and had a difficult family life at home because my brother struggled with drug addiction. I started to fight back and ended up placed in classes for behavioral disorders. The principal and staff did nothing to help me even though they knew I was not the instigator. At my school, if you were in a fight, both students were punished. I was expected to let them attack me and not defend myself. The only thing I regret is hitting a boy with a desk because I caused him permanent scars. Story 30. I was expelled from preschool for biting a classmate. He bit me first, so I bit him back. It was my second biting incident. I do not remember the details of the first. In the second incident, I was trying to place the letter that begins my first name into a letter puzzle when he bit me as I reached to insert it. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, I would have punched the classmate after biting him. Story 31. I had a teacher who insisted on calling me by a shortened version of my name. I refused to respond. At the parent-teacher meeting, the teacher said the shortened name does not listen. My mother asked who he meant. He doubled down and repeated the shortened name. The teacher then said my full name. I looked at him and said yes. My mother did not suffer fools either. I lost her in 2011 and miss her every day. Story 32. When I was in grade 5 during lunch break, I received an in-school detention for drinking too much water. It was summer in Australia and about 40 degrees Celsius, so I was very confused and remained so. The teacher told me I was drinking too much water and would drown myself. Story 33. At first, I was left-handed. When I left that behind, I got into trouble because I refused to change the spelling of my name, which, by the way, was not a freaky celebrity-style spelling but a common, familiar name, and because I pointed out that our grade curriculum was 2 years behind the one in the province I had just moved from. School was a place of many injustices. Story 34. Saying hello. I was popular in middle school when we were aged 13 to 16, and I was in 9th grade. I am a very social person and always kind to people unless they are rude to me first, so I never had anything against people dressing or acting differently. There was a group of goth kids and I had nothing against them. One day I walked past them, said hello, and continued with my life. The next year the principal called me to his office. I sat down and he and my teacher began interrogating me about what I had done to that group. I thought, what on earth? I asked them to explain, and they said they wanted me to tell them. I asked, was it when I said hello to them? They said yes. Then they informed me that they had opened a bullying case against me. I asked how that was bullying and told them off. I live in Norway, so they cannot expel or suspend you unless you are 18. They did not like me yelling at them and called my mother to a meeting. I told them to explain to her what I had done. They started saying that I had a lot of influence in the school and was popular, and that my saying hello could be taken as bullying. I said I did not laugh at them or make fun of them. Then they went on about how I should stop other people from bullying them. Safe to say my mother yelled at them more than I did. Story 35. At the beginning of the school year, my roommate at boarding school kept splashing water in my face even after I told him to stop. We were about to exchange blows when a hall monitor stepped into the room and intervened at the last moment. After that, we became best friends, and he defended me from a couple of students who later threatened to rob me because I was selling snacks. Story 36. I talked incessantly to classmates, staff, and anyone who would listen. I always tried to get out of trouble by talking more. Teachers called me Lil Bill, as in Bill Clinton. I am still very social, but as a child I could not stop talking. Story 37. I was in study hall in junior high and spent most of the period reading a book. The other 5 or 6 kids kept themselves busy by shooting rubber bands at each other. They were getting into it and it looked like fun. When one flew my way, I picked it up off the floor and decided to join in. The study hall teacher, who had not spoken a word the entire class as salvos of rubber bands flew back and forth across the room, immediately glared at me and loudly snapped, "Dungeon Master dude, you put that down." I was so shocked I dropped the rubber band and sat frozen while the other kids snickered. I have never understood why they singled me out, but it felt awful. Story 38. My group and I were really good friends with one of the campus supervisors. We'll call him Jack. We would get into silly shenanigans, and Jack would never get us in trouble because he thought it was funny. Near the end of the year, because Jack was leaving, I wanted to do something fun. In arts and crafts class, we had a button maker. So I printed colored photos of Jack using his employee photo from the school website. I kept one and gave 2 to friends. Jack saw the buttons and was annoyed we had not asked for permission, which is fair. The principal found out and called a meeting with me, my mother, and Jack. The principal said the buttons defamed and offended Jack. My mother asked Jack if the buttons offended him, and he said no. A few meetings later, the principal gave me in-house suspension, meaning I had to sit outside the principal's office 6 to 7 hours a day during finals week, removing me from class when I should have been preparing. Because of this, I failed most of my classes that year. Safe to say, he became my least favorite principal. Summary. I made buttons of a campus supervisor and was suspended during finals week. Story 39. In middle school, some friends and I got into spooky activities. Telling ghost stories, playing light as a feather, stiff as a board, trying Bloody Mary, and collecting crystals. One friend was a Jehovah's Witness and could not celebrate birthdays, so she was excluded from the sleepovers where we did these things. She felt left out, so we planned a just because sleepover so she could join. We turned off the lights, lit candles, and one friend closed her eyes and did automatic writing, pretending to channel spirits. The Jehovah's Witness friend became upset and asked us to stop, so we did and watched movies instead. The following Monday, we were called to the guidance counselor's office and questioned about the sleepovers. Since most of them happened at my house, I was dubbed the ringleader and accused of starting a coven and recruiting young women to follow the dark arts and worship Satan. At 13, I was called the High Priestess of Darkness and accused of speaking to spirits and summoning demons. My parents thought it was hilarious. The school did not. Story 40. Dress code violations. I had a bad habit of leaving my shirt untucked and running between classes without putting on my uniform jacket. Story 41. Pointing out the factual errors in the teacher's classroom lectures tended to cause me problems. Story 42. Timing. I threw a snowball at a friend across the campus yard just in time for two teachers to walk into the path of the snowball. I refused to be paddled and instead received 100 hours of detention. One of my peers in detention used her time wisely to remove every tap from each tap shoe and discard the fasteners. She worked daily, removing about 3 shoes a day. It was discovered when spring fling practice began. Fun times. Story 43. When I was in preschool, I waved goodbye to my dad when he dropped me off. I became sad and noticed the gate was not secured. So I left school and walked about 2.5 miles home. When I arrived, the doors were locked. I entered through a back window that was ajar. As soon as I got inside, the phone rang. It was the preschool. I hung up. In first grade, I went into the boys' bathroom and, on a dare, urinated in the middle of the room. I was hyperactive to the point that the teacher sometimes had to hold me like a baby to stop me from acting out. In 4th grade, I removed a girl's jacket at the playground. In 5th grade, I cut school and went to my 14-year-old neighbor's house. He engaged in inappropriate sexual behavior with me. In 6th grade, a girl and I cut class while lessons were in session. We ran all over campus, opened other classrooms' doors, and shouted "Ugu Ugu" at the top of our voices. We were caught and sent to the principal's office. School sent me home at 10 a.m. My parents sent me to a therapist and put me on Ritalin. My grades went from DS and FS to AS and BS. In 9th grade, a friend and I tried to cut school, but someone saw us and we backed out. In 10th grade, we cut school with several friends, went to a house about 20 miles away, and got very drunk playing a quarters drinking game. Other than that, my school years were relatively uneventful. Story 44. I beat the shit out of a teacher because he constantly made fun of me and made my life hell for no reason. The sad thing was other teachers knew what he was doing to me and didn't stand up for me. I absolutely detest bullies and how they operate. Story 45. I talked during class too often. I frequently learned quickly and often finished classwork and tests before others. My results included high test grades, but my homework grades suffered because I did not see the point in completing it when I understood the material from class. I did not need repetition at home. Story 46. I nipple-crippled a male teacher. I don't know what I was thinking. I really liked the teacher as well, he was the best. I was suspended and almost charged with assault. I wrote him an apology and gave it to him, almost crying. My friend and I were playing around, nipple-crippling each other. The teacher asked, "What are you doing?" and I showed him. I'm an idiot. Story 47. I'm a boomer. I went to a Christian Brothers school. What didn't I get into trouble for? One classic incident. I skipped sports one day, so a couple of other boys and I had to go to the sports room to maintain the equipment. We were mucking about, laughing and yelling, when a teacher came in and asked, "What are you doing?" I proudly announced, "I'm polishing Brother Kelly's balls." That got me into big trouble. Story 48. The better question is, how did I not get in trouble at school? Story 49. The most common reason was having a smart mouth. I had a problem with authority and was a cocky kid. Story 50. In 5th grade, our class was forced to sit in alphabetical order at lunch because a student from another grade smeared cake on a bathroom wall. I had to sit across from a bully and beside the most annoying person in class throughout the year. That year, many teachers seemed to take their personal and professional frustrations out on us. Story 51. I started a petition saying my teacher was being unfair, then threw it away after only 3 kids saw it. The rumor still reached my teacher, and I was grounded for weeks. My mother still insists she never formally grounded me. She gave me a series of individual punishments that added up to the same thing. Story 52. Once, I convinced a girl to throw a very large balloon filled with water from the 2nd floor. She did, and somehow I was suspended for handing it to her. Story 53. In 6th grade, I threw a crumpled paper ball across the room. I wish I were kidding. The teacher wanted to give me detention and suspend me because it was a Catholic school. My mom fought with the principal and teacher for 2 weeks. The teacher eventually backed down, apologized, and left me alone for the remainder of the year. Story 54. I got in a fight. A friend from 5th grade asked me to help him over the summer at a party his parents were throwing. We were assigned to collect empty beer bottles and return empty wine glasses to the kitchen, and there was little else to do. There were several younger kids at the party, many watching television in a side room, so I joined them when nothing was happening. By 6th grade, I asked my friend for the payment he had promised for helping, $90 of early 1990s video game money, a huge boon to my allowance. He told me on the first day he would give it to me by the end of the week. At the end of the week, he said I had not earned it, claiming I had watched television the whole time. I received nothing while he got $180. I pestered him about it the next week. He grew fed up and suddenly rushed me during gym class. I had superior balance and did not budge. He struck me in the stomach. I pushed him to disrupt his balance and then hit him with an uppercut that sent him to the floor. I received a Saturday detention for starting the fight. I think his parents knew what he was up to, because a week later he was sent to military school. I never saw him again and never received the money. Story 55. Installing a Trojan on the teacher's computer, so we could access the test answer keys. Story 56. I had to serve 2 weeks of in-school suspension for throwing crayons across the art room at my friends. I did not even throw the last one. It just landed near me, and the teacher told me to get out while laughing out loud. I was a freshman. Story 57. I absolutely launched a snowball at my friend, and it hit him in the back of the head. He was fine. It was just a snowball fight. I am not even going to argue about getting in trouble for that, but I do not regret it. My aim was perfect. I swear it curved to hit him. The teacher watched it leave my hand as well. There were 5 of us in the snowball fight, and we all got in trouble, laughing out loud. Story 58. Once, in physical education class during 1st grade, we were running laps around one of the basketball courts. I stopped for a second to breathe, and the teacher yelled at me to go to the Spanish room. I was 7 years old and needed oxygen. I had not done anything wrong. Story 59. A kid started talking trash and tried to harass me. He drove a tractor into our school parking lot and opened the manure spreader, dumping manure on his car. He refused to clean it up and had to dig his way in to get inside. That resulted in 4 days of out-of-school suspension. After I returned, I beat him up for looking at me sideways during a pep assembly, which earned me 5 days of out-of-school suspension. 10 years later, we are best friends and hang out weekly. Story 60. My teacher humiliated me in front of the whole class and forced me to sit at his desk with my computer screen facing him because he believed I had been watching a movie. I was very sick and at home on the day he said he caught me watching a movie. Story 61. I had ibuprofen in a zip-top bag because I would get headaches and did not want to bring the whole bottle. I took one in class. The son of the school liaison officer told his father I was taking pills. I was taken to the office with a police officer and the principal. They searched me, found the pills, accused me of selling them, and drug tested me. I smoked marijuana, so I tested positive. I was suspended and charged with intent to distribute on school property. The court case was dismissed, but I was suspended for a year. I missed the last half of my freshman year and the first half of my sophomore year. Online classes 15 years ago were excellent because I could search everything on the internet. Story 62. I jumped the wall to skip the last day of school. When I arrived home, my mother already knew. My friend sold me out to a teacher who asked where Cursebones was. My friend had not seen me that day. She was only asking whether I had come to school. My mother worked at the school, by the way. Story 63. Sneaked off on a field trip and smoked a cigarette. Someone snitched. Story 64. I mooned my class in third grade in 1993. I got in trouble, but not as much as I would today. Story 65. Shaving. I have always had a pronounced 5 o'clock shadow. In high school, we were required to be clean-shaven. Sometimes I got in trouble for running late and not shaving. Other times I would be in my sixth period class after shaving, and the teacher was very strict about checking for facial hair on boys. He would make you rub a piece of paper under your chin, and if it made scratching sounds, he would send you to the assistant principal's office. I cannot tell you how many times I was punished for not shaving. Story 66. I played a prank on a dinner lady when I was in middle school, so I would have been about 9 or 10. Story 67. My friend and I ran away from school in first grade during recess. We threw all our books into the creek by the playground and went to his house to play Nintendo all day, failing to notice that this caused a school lockdown and a citywide search for us because everyone thought we had been kidnapped. It all came to light when the police kicked the door in to inform us of what we had done. Story 68. During a 10-minute break, I was in the bathroom and in the queue for lunch, so I did not finish my sandwich. I entered class taking the last few bites. The teacher was in a bad mood, yelled at me when I tried to explain that I did not have time to finish before the bell, and sent me to the principal. I also got in trouble for sitting next to two friends who were a year older. The staff member who supervised the break said she was protecting me, but that was unnecessary. The principal agreed but still notified my mother because of school policy. It went on my record as talking to older males, which sounded like something from 1917 rather than the mid-2010s. Story 69. When I was in fifth grade, we had a buddy system where we took second or third graders under our wing to teach them how to be a good kid, a good student, and a kind sibling. The child assigned to me would never listen. He hit other kids, stole from them, and was just plain mean and annoying. At the end of the buddy system, we were to give reviews along with words of encouragement. I was honest. I wrote him a letter saying that if he kept being mean and hitting people, nobody would like him. I said I did not have fun with him as my buddy because he would not listen and seemed to go out of his way to be mean. I also wrote that I was glad he was not my sibling. 20 minutes later, I was pulled from an assembly and taken to the principal's office where the child was crying. I felt a little bad, but I told them I had been honest and that he needed to learn to be nice. Obviously, I was the one who got in trouble. I hope he learned something that day. Story 70. I am cutting class and using the teacher's bathroom because I am not going in the student's bathroom. Story 71. I stood up to multiple bullies because fighting is wrong. Story 72. I sold cans of Pepsi and lemonade from an esky or cooler in my locker. The canteen did not sell them, so I filled the gap. The school suspended me for stealing their income. It was a private school and they were making a huge profit from tuition fees. Story 73. I was wearing a hoodie with the wrong colors. The outside was navy as required, but the inside of the hood was white, so I got detention. Story 74. I did not know the location of a student who jumped out of the window. The whole class held back because they were male. When I said the word wildfire, the teacher thought it was a new swear word. Story 75. I threatened to cook my bullies alive and eat them so they would leave me alone. Somehow that was misconstrued as a threat to bomb the school, and someone even turned in a hit list I never wrote. Students were afraid to open their lockers because they thought I might have snuck into the school at night to put bombs in their lockers. Story 76. For the last day of year 12, we had a muck-up day. We put barbecue sauce on the black railings throughout the school. The muck-up day was canceled. Other people broke into the school overnight and mowed a number of obscene drawings into the grass. They never found out who did it. Story 77. I left chess club early because I did not want to be late for my next class. When I got to my classroom, some students were playing up and the head of year 10 was standing in the doorway. I squeezed past him and said, "Excuse me, sir." Just then the bell rang for the end of lunch. He shouted that everyone in the classroom should go to his office now. I said that I had just arrived. He repeated that it was for everyone. We all received the strap for being in the classroom at lunch. Story 78. I brought a ball-bearing gun to school in Australia, which is illegal. Police officers were called. A search warrant was executed on my house, and I received a week of in-school suspension. I was in year 8 when this happened. Story 79. In 1980, they started busing white kids from the suburbs to inner-city schools, and I was one of them. I was a timid, shorter-than-average Mormon goody-goody. I had undiagnosed autism and barely spoke. I remember stepping onto the sidewalk at lunch and being yelled at to get back on the blacktop. I said sorry and tried to wave. The monitor cornered me and demanded, "What was that sign you gave me? What was that hand sign?" I was so scared. I didn't know any gang signs. Story 80. I knocked a few 50-gram bronze weights off a shelf in the science room. Little discs flew through the air like you would not believe. One curved too much and hit the bin just outside the staff room. Everyone rushed out. Story 81. A young teacher once had a full-blown screaming episode at me, saying, and I quote, "You were challenging and belittling me." She also said, "I have completed my master's degree. How dare you question me?" We were discussing liquid thermometers. Because I was a curious child, I asked, "Mercury is liquid at room temperature, but it is a metal. Does that mean we use liquid thermometers when we measure its temperature? Or is there a metal thermometer for it?" Afterward, other teachers and my mother told me it was my fault for asking. I was not allowed to ask questions during class. Kids in my class milked that event for the rest of the year. I was 12. Story 82, grade 5, I was 10 at the time, went down the road to the local theater and museum. There was a glass display cabinet with an open front. Inside was something cool but very small. I leaned forward to get a better look, my forehead probably just inside the display case. At the end of the excursion, we were sitting in the foyer when the teachers began asking certain children to stand up and announcing to everyone what each student had done wrong. I thought it was strange because we had been behaving. Then my name was called, and everyone was told that I had been head-butting the glass display. That is how a few friends and I ended up in the principal's office. Story 83. In kindergarten, I broke a crayon. I was curious how fragile it was, so I pressed it lightly and it snapped. I was surprised. Then I had to change colors. Story 84. Fighting and smoking in junior high. Being a smart aleck in high school kept me in trouble but did not lead to fights. Smoking was allowed. Story 85. I called almost every girl in my class a bitch in 4th grade. I wasn't wrong. They were hypocritical private school bitches. Story 86. So I just remembered this the other day while telling the story to my wife. I called the girl involved a little bitch, which my wife strongly objected to. She was, and I am still salty. This happened so long ago that our desks had holes for an ink pot and we used pens with nibs. I am old. The girl sitting in front of me had a long braid and she was always flipping her head around. She managed to dip her braid in my ink pot and ran screaming to the teacher, claiming I had done it deliberately. Did the teacher believe me? Of course not, and I was punished. Story 87. Whenever my teacher wasn't looking, I would throw random papers she had sitting around the classroom out the window. The teacher in the room below kept seeing papers fall from the window during second period, and he told her. Then she caught me. She made me go pick up the papers and promise I wouldn't do it again. I did not, and instead drove to 7-Eleven for a Slurpee. I miss high school. Story 88. I walked home in 4th grade because I did not feel like waiting for the bus. Apparently you could not do that. In 4th or 5th grade, we used to wet toilet paper and throw it against the wall. I almost got caught for that but avoided punishment. In 6th grade, I pulled down a classmate's pants. It was the 1990s. In 7th grade, I asked the technology education teacher, "If you put a baby in the microwave, would it blow up?" I was sent to the guidance counselor for that. I then criticized the teacher for overreacting to what I meant as a bad joke and was sent to the principal. In high school, I mostly skipped class or arrived late because I missed the bus. If I had to walk, I would stop at the local bagel shop for breakfast. I once wrote breakfast on the sign-in sheet. The vice principal asked why I was late. I explained I missed the bus and stopped for breakfast. He said, "On the sheet you wrote breakfast. You should be commended for your honesty, but that is not the point." I told him I understood and to do whatever he had to do. The vice principal had been my gym teacher at a previous school, so we had a rapport. Story 89. We became friends afterward, but our attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tics did not get along. I was standing a little too close behind him while he was kicking his feet like a slow, stationary skip. I was irritable that day. I did not know that was a tic until after I was diagnosed, and I kicked him in retaliation. We were suspended from lunch for 3 days. 7th grade. Story 90. I let my antisocial personality show, making my peers and teachers aware of their place. Needless to say, making my 5th grade teacher cry got me expelled from elementary school, or maybe it was insulting the principal on the way to the office. Story 91. When I was in kindergarten, I threw a rock about the size of my fist at an older kid's head during recess. Unironically, it was the most coordinated I have ever been. I only remember a fragment of my teacher dragging me to the principal's office while I grabbed onto anything stationary in the hallway to stop her. I was an asshole until middle school. Story 92. I bought candy on my walk to school and sold it to students at a markup. Later, I made fake New Jersey identification cards. This was back in the day when nobody cared. Today, I would be serving prison time for making identification cards. My dad caught me because I was using his color printer, scanner, and laminator. He was upset at first, but when I told him how much I had made, he was proud. Story 93. Oh my God. Too many late check-ins. Too many early checkouts. Leaving without checking out. Missing too many days. Leaving for lunch during class. Constantly sleeping in class. Being in the wrong class at the wrong time. Being in the lunchroom when it was not my lunch period. I hated school and avoided going to class as often as I could. Story 94. We used to sell chocolates. I know it sounds silly, but they had been banned for about 5 years. Once a group of 5 or 6 students in our class, including me, started selling them secretly. It became such a hit that even seniors 3 to 4 grades above began doing it. The ban was lifted, then another ban was introduced. Comic books and manga were also banned, but some classes figured out how to sell those too, and that ban was eventually lifted as well. Later, the principal was transferred, and after I graduated from college, I heard that the school no longer had such bans. Students became very polite, almost never participated in interstate competitions, and produced far fewer athletes. We were rebellious and broke rules, and looking back, I feel deep pity for our class teachers who were there at the time. Parent-teacher association meetings were extremely funny and very difficult at the same time. You knew you were going to get scolded, and your friends were too. Story 95. If we ate outside for lunch, the school would not let us in until the bell rang. One day it was particularly cold, so I took a couple of school newspapers and started a small fire outside the school. After a teacher confronted us and my friend told on me, I got in trouble. The principal said it was the dumbest thing he had ever seen. Story 96. A friend and I walked around telling other kids that Jesus was black during recess in 5th grade. Story 97. I was sitting at my assigned seat at a table with the worst mischief makers in the school, and the teacher would assign detention to the whole table without considering that I had nothing to do with it. By the 3rd time, my parents called the guidance counselor to complain. The counselor brought the teacher in, but the teacher defended herself, saying I must be part of it because I was at the table where she had assigned me to sit. The counselor said, "Try putting him at a different table and see what happens." From then on, I did not get detention. Story 98. I threw a sharpened pencil at a classmate because she was gossiping and giving graphic details about a car crash that killed my close friend the previous weekend. We were seniors, and my friend had died while returning from the University of Oklahoma versus the University of Texas game. The classmate was not friends with my friend, and I had asked her several times not to discuss it. We had multiple classes together, and in each one she repeated the same graphic descriptions. I threw the pencil, and the teacher made me stand in the hallway for the rest of the period. Story 99. Just being late to class earned me a tardy, which then led to a 30-minute detention. My school was strict about the attendance policy. Story 100. I was expelled from school for physically assaulting a teacher. Sounds like a fair punishment, right? Except I had never met the teacher, and witnesses could vouch that I was not even in the same area of the school when the supposed incident occurred. Story 101. I scanned and printed some $50 notes on the new photo printer my parents bought. Someone tried to cash one, got caught, and reported me. The federal police came and told me to be better. Story 102. There was a rubber band snapping fight in shop class. I was hit in the eye at point-blank range by a very large rubber band and was blinded for about an hour. During in-school suspension, my disapproving English teacher assigned me to write an essay explaining the events that led to my situation and to label every word with its part of speech. Story 103. I was on the Flying Fox when a kid ran into my path as I approached, and I hit him. I got in trouble for supposedly trying to hit him on purpose. I couldn't have stopped easily once I was moving. Story 104. My primary school made us sit down for the whole of lunchtime, which isn't unusual, but we were not allowed to get up at all. I got in trouble for putting my rubbish in the bin. I just didn't want to hold it while I ate the rest of my food. Story 105. Trying to be funny and making witty comments in class. Making tiny wet paper balls and blowing them at the teacher through a straw. Leaning back in my chair against the wall. Not paying attention. Distracting other students and talking out of turn. Annoying others by clicking my pen or tapping my feet. Playing video games during computer class. Shooting elastic bands around the classroom. Being late for class every day. Not doing my homework. I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder last year, and looking back I can see why I was the most annoying kid in class. Story 106. Lots of ways. I was not considered a problem kid at my school, but looking at some of the things I got in trouble for, I doubt that would be true at many other places. Let us start boring and end wilder. Forgetting to do homework. Not handing in drafts of assignments. Reading books in class. Sleeping in class. Not knowing where the class was up to in reading because I had already finished the book or was ahead. Climbing trees and buildings. Getting in fights. Underage drinking. Breaking another student's nose and arm. Supplying alcohol to other students. Blowing up a chair. Running Counter-Strike tournaments over the school network. Creating secure depots for students to store all sorts of files. Disabling the school network when someone tried to find out who was uploading various things. Taking bets on a fighting ring. Creating and selling fireworks. Making large glass pieces using petrol. Flooding the school oval and releasing a boat onto it. I received a solid A for behavior except in mathematics one year, when the teacher was sick of me not doing my work and reading books in class. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.